Hi guys, welcome back to the channel and to the next installment of Project Vulcan. This episode we'll be looking at how the damping and the anti-roll bars affect the car. Decided to do them together as you can use them in conjunction, with each other quite well to gain the right balance on entry and exit of corners. Last week obviously we were working with the springs and the ride height. So this is the next step on and the next thing that I like to change when looking at my tunes. First up, really important to drive the car for a few corners to get used to it again before we make any changes. Even if you remember it being balanced last time, might not really feel like it today. And of course we need to get our bearings back on the track, where to brake and how we're feeling about the tune and what to do. After the springs are, I'm not going to say sorted, but adjusted. I like to work with the damping and the anti-roll bars together and have a simple way to think about what they do, or rather how they affect the car. So if you think about anti-roll bars or on entry, corner adjustment on entry, springs, which we covered last week, are a mid-corner adjustment and balance. And rebound and bump stiffness affect corner exit, grip and abilities. We'll see in a minute. I think to probably understand this a little bit more, we need to delve into what, as I drive off, what bump damping, rebound damping, anti-roll bars actually are. So I'll try and explain it as best as I can. Bear with me, because it's difficult to get into this without really delving too deep into it. So I guess first up, bump damping. When a car drives over a bump, the dampers and the springs I guess absorb the upward movement of the road, and they sort of store that energy before the dampers and the springs go into their downward cycle, known as rebound. And if there isn't enough movement or enough energy storage there, then that downward cycle starts too early, and that can unsettle the car. If you think, if you're still going over a bump and the suspension tries to crash down onto the bump, that's really going to unsettle the car. Whether you're accelerating, going around a long corner, it may just have that bouncing effect, which we talked about before. Obviously that isn't what we want to achieve at all. The next stage then, rebound damping, rebound damping even. The dampers extend, following that compression phase, the dampers extend back to their original positions, using up that stored energy we talked about. The higher the rebound stiffness, the faster this process happens in essence. But too much and the car won't be able to keep up with the road surface, if you like. Too little and it will oscillate over the bumps, and we'll get that bouncing effect that we like having the bump too low. And it will obviously just become impossible to put down the power. So in essence, raising the front stiffness of both bump damping and rebound damping increases understeer, and therefore increasing rear stiffness increases oversteer. Onto anti-roll bars, you've got the description on the screen there. So anti-roll bars are simple but at the same time complicated. They're the element that connect the two suspension parts on an axle together with the purpose of reducing body roll mid-corner without stiffening the suspension rate. Difficult to explain how they do this. Bear with me. I guess the easiest way is I'll screw up that corner again. Let's have another go at that. Best way I've sort of found to describe it is the roll bars work by limiting the difference between the left and right hand side of the car by providing a sort of semi-rigid link, if you like. As you turn in, the body wants to compress to the outside and roll to the outside of the corner. And as the suspension tries to compress, obviously the inside wheel isn't compressed, and the anti-roll bar is there to sort of deflect that body roll, if you like. So it bends to allow more suspension movement, like I said, without having the suspension stiffer. I think it's probably important to understand that anti-roll bar isn't the sort of roll cage element that maybe a lot of people think, and it's not a rigid component. It is metal. It's a stiff metal bar, and if you try to bend it yourself, you probably have quite a difficult task. But you know, it's designed to flex under load, giving the effect of a stiffer spring rate, but through something else. So what does that mean to us? To reduce body roll, to keep the car flatter, increase both the front and the rear anti-roll bars. Personally, don't like to have stiff springs and anti-roll bars too often. I feel like you lose that adjustability, and that the whole car, unless it's really balanced, sort of natively balanced if you like, it just feels so bumpy on the road, and it's so sensitive to adjustments and movements of the steering, which is quite difficult, especially in a long race, and you lose concentration, that sort of thing. Obviously, if you want to reduce understeer, stiffen the rear anti-roll bar, or lower the front anti-roll bar. If you want to reduce oversteer, stiffen the front anti-roll bar and lower the rear anti-roll bar. That makes sense. So we've done quite a lot of adjustments in this video without sort of explaining what they are. So I'll walk through next time we sort of make a video, just going around a couple of corners here. See, we are ahead of our Ghost at the minute. Diving into the hairpins is quite a difficult one to take advantage of, and you can see the last sort of setup that we were trying came out of there much better. Let's see if we can go around this corner this time. Missed the apex a little bit, but that was much smoother. It's quite crashy over that curb still. Go around here and then adjust it. Still don't know whether to take this corner in second or third, so when we do the gears we'll have to think about this. Same with this one. Seems to be hooking up nicely, coming out the corners now, but I think we'll take a look. So you see, we got the front anti-roll bar quite low. I've forgotten to do the tyre pressures, so I just like having them a little bit low. I don't know if it's a placebo effect or what it may be. Now, actually, what I'm going to do here is interesting, because yes, we're looking at the anti-roll bars and the damping, but that doesn't mean you can't go back and change other elements. We're building up a setup layer on layer. Just because you've set the springs at a level which felt comfortable with the previous damping setups, as I totally naff up the chicane, doesn't mean that they're going to work really well with the damping and the roll bars that you set up next. So every time we make an adjustment further down the setup, we've got to go back to that original, the original settings, what we did last week and the week before that, and change them to how it suits as well. You might find that actually really stiff anti-roll bars works for you, but stiff springs at the same time doesn't work, so you might try and lower the springs again, and you sort of repeat that process as I go really wide. See if we can get a better exit out of here. And I think we are. It hooks up pretty well actually, the compromise line. It's not bad going. So you constantly got to be evolving the setup. Yes, it is a one-by-one operation. I urge you to, if you change something on the setting, adjust one thing at a time. I know I don't always do it. I guess it's a do as I say, not as I do sort of element, if you like. If you adjust one thing, you can tell that is the thing that is changing the setup, rather than the combination of the two. Even if you know what you're going to change, do it one by one. Have a lap or a couple of corners, as that curve's really playing havoc with us actually. So you know exactly what element of the car has changed the characteristics of the driving, and that will help you get to know the car and the setup better as well. If you know that actually I've got a corner which is really bugging me, and I'm struggling to put the power down, maybe we'll raise the front rebound. Like here, I'm raising the front rebound, and I'm raising the front anti-roll, but I'm actually lowering the bump, because I don't think we need as much. That the whole car can sort of be a bit softer on going over bumps. There aren't many here, I'm coming up to the main culprit in a second around the chicane, sort of going into the last section of the lap. See how we go through here. Oh yeah, it's much better then. You see how the car just hooked up instantly. The traction control light barely flashed, which is a really good sign that the car's starting to feel that little bit easier to drive harder. Not necessarily quicker, but easier to hook up, you know, more and more corners and laps. So we take 3.5 tenths out of the lap we already had, which is a good sign. Again, if you're doing a longer race, you want the car to be easy to drive. You want the car to be able to hook up out of slow corners with little effort. We've got traction on here. If you were setting the car up for no traction, I've mentioned this a few times in previous videos, it's a different style of tuning. You need that rear grip more than you do with traction control. You can't rely on just flooring the throttle and having the back end of the car rotate around like we did in that corner there, and we'll do out of here as well. You can't rely on the traction to save you and the car rotating nicely, so you have to have a stiffer front spring or a stiffer anti-roll bar, or however you end up setting the car up. It's slightly different, and I think rebounds and bump stiffness actually become more important when you have no traction control. So we'll, again, that corner, keep going over that bump. I think we'll change the ride height now. I think it's really starting to see how that does it. I think if we hark back to the point I made at the beginning of the video, that anti-roll bars are entry to corners. So if you're struggling to get the front end, the nose into a corner, lower that front anti-roll bar. Try it. Oh, wide again. See if it bites more as you turn in. Through the corner, how flat is the car? Can we adjust the suspension? Coming out of the corner, are the dampers doing their job properly? Are the front wheels still, able to turn and have their grip, but are the rears able to bite into the road? And depending on what sort of car and track it is, you may well want a sort of squatting effect from the suspension to sort of bite into the road, like we're starting to get actually with this front ride height. And think back to last week, raising the front ride height will help with that sort of squatted suspension and take another 3 tenths out of the lap and help you get that drive out of the corner. May not help on turn-in, may not be terrible, but it's worth trying. Just run you through the setup changes that we made then. So we've lowered that rear spring. So we were similar to the front on 1100 or so. Raised that ride height. We've gone for a relatively standard sort of 11, 12, 3.3 setup. Just quite a nice reminder we've got the rest of the the camber and alignment, everything still stock from the factory, if you like, from Forza. Anyway, that's it guys for this episode. Please do ask any questions in the comments. I realise I rambled on a little bit. Let me know how you're getting on with your Vulcan or other cars you like tuning. Give the video a like, subscribe and hit the little bell if you want to be notified when I next put a video up. Next time we'll be trying to conquer camber, toe and caster, which I know is a bugbear for a lot of you. So look forward to seeing you then. Cheers guys.